Without people, a historic city is just a museum, nothing more. It becomes a series of objects which have architectural and historical value. But this isn't how cities really are. We live in cities. These are our homes. Our grandparents lived over there. Our friends lived over there. Our memories are attached to the fabric of the city. So people must be included and have a voice in how their spaces are managed.
Petrovaradin Fortress is this amazingly inspiring case. It spreads across more than 250 acres, and 90% of its 18th century structures have been well preserved. But what's even more inspiring to it is that humans have been living here since prehistory, and many human settlements have been shaping the dynamics and materiality of this place up until today.
We invited 30 young professionals from over 25 countries. We invited a lot of local professionals who are dealing with the fortress. And over the course of 1 week, we really opened up for any kind of critique, any kind of idea, any kind of knowledge that can come into the classroom, come into this space and produce new perspective.
So we were wondering what to do with this case. How could we approach it? How could we understand it better, and how could we influence it?
Petrovaradin Fortress was listed firstly as a cultural monument in 1948. Still, it was all used by military, and in the former Yugoslavia state. It was built as a unique defense operational system. It consists today of the upper fortress, Hornwerk, and the lower fortress where we are now. The fortress which stands today and which we preserve as our cultural heritage was built in the period of the 1692 till 1780.
So Petrovaradin Fortress is this cultural monument of high importance. And of course, you can't really approach it only as a cultural monument that should be preserved, its facades restored, and all kind of protected. So you have to look at it as a city almost within a city, with all its residents, all its private actors, all the social dynamics and struggles, the transportation and ways of kind of working and walking and so on. And this is why we wanted to broaden the approach to heritage management and preservation here. That's why we chose an historic urban landscape approach.
I would say the richness of the HUL approach is that no longer puts forward one category, one type of heritage everyone should start listing, but rather ask communities to retrospect and understand the city they live in, what they love and appreciate, and determine what their heritage is.
The Historic Urban Landscape Initiative brings a number of things to the management of the city, but for me the most important thing is how it forces you to integrate the management of one area, the historic area, with the rest of the city.
So what is main issues pointed out were lack of content for tourists, activities, parking, infrastructure issues.
There's a lack of interpretive measures, official signage or sort of any wayfinding that leads you through the site.
Now we are very happy to receive tourists. We are very proud to see them coming in greater numbers every year. And I think we should just think about what they're seeing now and what can they see in the future.
Everybody here in Petrovaradin, and even the tourists, think of Petrovaradin Fortress as a sort of picture card perfect portrait. I mean, you see the fortress from the other side of the river on the rock, you see the clock tower, and that's where it stops actually.
Our task was to examine different interpretations of the Petrovaradin fortress heritage. For us, the most significant challenge was to identify, to map all those different sources of interpretations. There is obviously lack of clear strategical thinking. So you can find, we call it like a patchwork of different narratives that are existing but are not coordinated enough.
General conclusion is the historical narrative, or better to say historical narratives are dominating, especially this to say that recent history of the building of this fortress, the Austro-Hungarian period. I had the impression from this research that people still, the inhabitants of Novi Sad, are not well informed or not much informed about this narrative. It seems like paradox.
Traffic was the most point out issue of the Petrovaradin fortress and the biggest problem basically. Other issues that we perceived, and the users also, are the ateliers of the artists.
For me, what was really interesting for the whole fortress was the numerous narratives that are associated with the fortress. Some of them are very obvious when you visit the fortress, as it is a military fortress, or if you see the museum. But some of them are not very obvious to the naked eye, which I wanted to discover and uncover. So what we looked at was the fortress. We went to the museum, tried to uncover some of the hidden stories.
We discovered actually that the fortress is way larger than that. I mean, and that is an amazing potential, realizing that you have all these spaces that are currently not being used or not being managed. So actually recognizing this is one of the real challenges also of Petrovaradin fortress.
By opening up this case, we wanted to produce new places of encounter, new spaces of solidarity, and new ways of cooperation between the city mayor, city institutions, different businesses who do their business here, festivals, local community and residents, as well as numerous civil society actors that are very interested and care for this place. We also wanted to open it up for perspective, knowledge and experiences of a vast international community who is quite eager to contribute to how we see and how we understand this space.
All of the stakeholders has a strong opinion or stress that there is no manager of the Petrovaradin fortress, and also there is no management structure of the Petrovaradin fortress. During our research, we realized that there is a manager of the Petrovaradin fortress, and also there is a management structure, but the structure is so complex.
Such a great number of civil society organizations actually is the consequence of this lack of communications and coordinations between different organizational units who are by the law in charge of the fortress.
So very early it became clear that there is a lack of leadership at the municipal level, while you can clearly see that there is an appetite at the community level to change the current situation. And I think it's time to take action and encourage the bottom-up approach to resolving the main issue, which is lack of clear management.
With regard to the local community, they take pride in the fortress, but they also have no means how to participate in the management of the fortress or even in decision making.
managing a historic site in a historic city is really about managing the people who live there as well. Yes, we can manage the decay of the buildings, we know how to do that, but also the people who live in them, they require support, they require attention, and they have to be listened to. And that's really hard. There are so many different views and different ideas as to what is right. The site manager has to take all of that into account and make decisions based upon their expert of experience of the historical and architectural values, but also those community values as well.
For us, any kind of process is a good process to share. Educational, research process or a planning process. These are all excellent opportunities in which we can come together with different people, open up to different perspectives, and realize that we are not alone in this thing.
What we want to achieve is not only to bring tourism to the area, because tourists, of course, they might be interested in the different characters of the different parts, but at the same time connecting the area with the rest of the city.
Let's say, what if we intervene in the space in a very way to make these two feelings, the lost fortress and feeling lost in the fortress, actually be present? So what we want to do is to uncover the lost fortress and to discover the feeling of being lost.
We, in particular, wanted to develop an interpretation strategy for the Fortress Petrovaradin that conveyed the stories of the silent others. So the narratives that don't get to be heard, the narratives that have been lost, and the narratives that are now hidden under the dominant narrative, which is a historic and military and masculine narrative. Basically, you don't hear anything about women, you don't hear anything about workers, you don't hear anything about children. You also don't hear very much, you hear a little bit about the Ottoman period, about the Tito period from 1950 onward, and you hear basically nothing unless you go out and talk to them from locals and daily life.
So our mission is to protect, revitalize and promote Petrovaradin fortress while fostering economic regeneration by using local resources efficiently and also integrating it in the wider context of Novi Sad.
We really feel that this represents a clear opportunity to create a new organisation dedicated to the area and built to protect, promote and advocate on its behalf. We've called our concept United Petrovaradin. We have a focus on the future and that this is a representative body built on the collaboration of key stakeholders that will lobby on behalf of the area and actively shape its future. That being an independent, self-sustaining organisation working in partnership with the local community to protect and promote the heritage of Petrovaradin.
So for the first time after almost 40 years, we have finally had a chance to do something with those buildings, to renovate facades and roofs, which is really important. And it's a really hard job, but we are like struggling every day. And after almost a year, I think, when it started, we already can see some differences and changing the atmosphere all over the lower town.
Conservation, preservation and management is a hard task to deal with, but we can, in any way, we can choose and we can propose solutions for it. But without their help, without their support, community, and we cannot do it.
Yes, we want Fortress to be like this. We want to keep this, to preserve it, to have this respectful relation to our guests, not to get them lost, and not to have all these like huge numbers of tourists that will just cater and let them go. But we want to really have something meaningful for them, and that's what will stand out for our tourism offer in the future.
But in the end, there are many, many things you can do without a big management structure or all these, I don't know, all these difficult things. If we want big change in 20 years, you have to start today with small things.
My message to decision makers in sites like this here, beautiful Petrovaradin, is to consider the people as a part of the historic fabric. Without those people, they have just a museum object, and nobody wants to visit a museum, no one wants to live in a museum. People love living historical places that are places for people and places for their memories.
Just imagine walking around this place, walking around the fortress, and from corner to corner and from square to square, you discover something new. You not only discover different layers of the past, but also how contemporary art gets created. So in every corner you can see a new artist producing their own work.
Can you imagine every Monday afternoon, everyone who's using the fortress, loving the fortress, knowing about it, gather all up in one place, in one big room, sit around one big round table, and openly discuss what is going to be the future of the fortress.
Just imagine the whole lower town, the whole Gradić with its unique ambience without traffic. So with public spaces being opened, with trees being planted, with benches all around, where you could actually meet up a friend for a coffee, interact with the locals, and discuss numerous topics.
Just imagine that all around the fortress you can walk around, you can play with your kids, you can do some sports, you can just relax outdoors. And it's all around the fortress you feel as if the fortress belongs to you.
Imagine that Wasserstadt is not this military base, but a place where you can go each weekend, hear a new band, see a new performance, do some sports and recreation.
Can you imagine that all those who use the fortress and have some benefits of the fortress also feel the responsibility to give back to the fortress?
Imagine that the walls, the benches, the trees of this fortress could speak. That while wandering the fortress, you could actually interact with different voices and historic layers that have been shaping this place from prehistory up to today.
Can you imagine fortress being this amazing place in which every minute you find out something new? You find out something that makes you wonder, what is this place? We would love these dreams to become everyday reality of the fortress.